Hey everybody, I just wanted to take a little bit of a break from our normal patterns of study to talk about what happened yesterday in the United States. If you did not see yesterday, members of both houses of Congress met for a session to confirm the results of the 2020 presidential election to certify that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would be the next president and vice president of the United States. Normally, this type of certification is a formality that occurs with no media coverage. Americans pay very little attention to it. However, a group of individuals traveled to Washington, D.C. yesterday to protest the results of the election with the hope of overturning those results. A few thousand people gathered outside the United States Capitol. They removed barriers designed to keep the building secure, and eventually protesters overran Capitol Police and illegally entered the building. When these men and women disobeyed police, entered the Capitol, and perpetrated acts of violence, they ceased to be protesters and became criminals at best. At worst, they became terrorists. That's right, terrorists. For Americans, I know this word conjures up really strong images, and we rarely ascribe that word to American citizens. But a terrorist is anyone who uses violence and intimidation to achieve political goals. That's precisely what people did yesterday in Washington, D.C. Without doubt, the events which occurred yesterday in the nation's capital embarrassed me as an American citizen. The actions of a small minority of the individuals in this nation undermined nearly 250 years of American tradition, sacrifice, and commitment to democracy. Let's take a look at some of the important information that we need to take from this scene yesterday. First, we want to consider the danger of mob mentality. I don't believe most of the Americans who traveled to Washington did so with the intention of storming the Capitol. Despite the best of intentions, though, they committed crimes against their nation and their fellow man. The emotion of anger due to any slight or perceived slight carries significant weight, and when you're surrounded by others who are like-minded, people are sometimes going to act in ways they ordinarily would not. Please understand that what these people did yesterday was nothing less than criminal. Never let others drive your decision-making, particularly when they appeal to your sense of emotion, and especially when that emotion is anger. The mob which entered the Capitol roamed through the offices of congressmen and senators, rifled through their desks, their personal belongings, and had access to sensitive information about the United States. They indulged themselves by sitting in the chairs of lawmakers, stealing the property of others, and taking selfies to commemorate their stupidity. These people documented themselves committing crimes, and they didn't seem to care or understand about the consequences they will face. They carried Confederate flags into the United States Capitol, something that never once occurred in the Civil War. They dared to hold up Blue Lives Matter flags after they overran Capitol Police. We also have to take a moment to consider and address the reasons these people came to Washington. Certain media outlets and politicians advance the idea that somehow Democrats stole the election of 2020 from Donald Trump. Let me be clear. No credible evidence exists which indicates widespread election fraud. The Trump administration filed dozens of lawsuits in multiple states in an attempt to demonstrate voter fraud, and they lost these cases. It's also worth noting that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and Vice President Mike Pence both stated that Trump needed to accept the results of the election. American political culture heavily revolves around the idea that a losing side in an election must accept the results of democracy. Joe Biden rightfully won the election, and while this may not be the result many people wanted, this does not mean the election was stolen or rigged. The continued refusal to accept the will of the people erodes a core value of our society and creates a dangerous precedent for the future. While I understand that people may have supported President Trump or his policies, they should consider how they would respond if a president they did not like would attempt to do something similar in the future. Now we have to move on to an even uglier truth about the situation. Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America, must bear a significant responsibility for the events which transpired yesterday. For months, Trump knew the 2020 election would possibly and then as it moved closer to the election, likely end in a Joe Biden victory. In an attempt to remain in power, Trump sowed seeds of doubt in his followers. He peppered the nation with statements claiming that Biden could not win unless the election was rigged. After the election, Trump continued to hold political rallies and encouraged his supporters to donate money to his legal defense. The president attempted to bully Georgia's state election officials into finding additional votes, and President Trump also took the measure of pushing his own vice president to invalidate the counting of election results in the Senate yesterday, something that even the vice president said he does not have the authority to do. Yesterday, President Trump spoke to his supporters and urged them to walk from Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol building. He tweeted out for people to join the march to save America. He encouraged people to continue to fight and to stop the steal. When the protests became a riot in the Capitol, Trump waited for hours before ordering the National Guard to restore order. In a pre-recorded message, Trump urged rioters to go home, but did so after saying they were right in being angry because of a stolen election. He referred to them as special people and said that we love them. This is tantamount to dumping an ounce of water and a gallon of gasoline onto a fire. If you need further evidence of Trump's culpability in yesterday's events, members of the White House staff and cabinet are leaving this administration. The vice president, the Senate majority leader, and other former Trump supporters within government are acknowledging that the president has gone too far. The 25th Amendment to the United States Constitution permits the vice president and a majority of the president's cabinet to remove the president from power if they believe he or she is unfit to serve. For the first time since that amendment was added to the Constitution, members of government are seriously considering using this option. President Trump has less than 2 weeks remaining in his 4-year term, but this is where the nation finds itself, to the point where we must determine if the president is too dangerous to be left in power for 13 days. You should also understand that the international community, both our friends and enemies, are perplexed by what's happening in our nation. If the same things occurred in other nations, we would use terms like failed state, coup d'etat, or fascism. Despite the insanity and humiliation of yesterday's events, I can point to some bright moments, some bright spots. For one, the vast majority of Congress put their egos and their party affiliation aside and acted in the interest of democracy and the nation. After the National Guard and other police reestablished control of the Capitol, Congress completed its business of certifying the results of the election of 2020. One of the most important aspects of our governmental system is the fragmentation of power. We have always known the dangers of placing power in the hands of one person. And though yesterday embarrassed the nation, our democracy will survive to see another day. No one enjoys living in the difficult times, but we would not be able to fully appreciate this nation, our freedoms, and our way of life without knowing what it cost. Thomas Paine once wrote that what we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. This nation endured a difficult revolution, a civil war, a Great Depression, and a number of other chaotic situations. We will endure this too. But the nation and the democracy only endure and they only survive if you and I take our roles as citizens seriously. I'm only 41 years old, and while that's still relatively young, I'm no spring chicken either. It's up to the youth of the nation to continue the work that previous generations began. It is my sincerest hope that your generation eclipses any accomplishments of my own generation. You must participate in the political process. Vote, express your views, peaceably assemble, contact government officials, run for office, make good decisions for you, your family, your community, and your country. What you cannot do, though, is resort to violence to achieve your political goals. This is not the American way. Any political gains which come through lies, violence, or intimidation never last, nor should they. I hope you guys are doing well at home. Hopefully I can see you again soon. Thanks.